the news tonight, His Majesty and heads and members of the Houses of Lords and Commons in the British Parliament discuss economic and security cooperation. Syria peace talks in Geneva showed a first sign of movement as the government team agrees to discuss a political transition. And Iraqi forces close in on Daesh militants in western Mosul as the fighting prompts thousands to flee. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Majesty the King met in London with heads and members of the Houses of Lords and Commons in the British Parliament. The talks with the House of Commons, Foreign Affairs, International Development and Defence Committees and the House of Lords International Relations Committee dealt with Jordanian-British ties and developments in the Middle East. They also focused on ways and means to forge closer ties between Jordan and the UK in the economic, military and security fields. His Majesty expressed appreciation of Britain's support that helped Jordan carry out development programs and shoulder the burden of hosting Syrian refugees. The King stressed the need to follow up on last year's London Donor Conference, urging donor countries to fulfill their pledges and assist countries hosting Syrian refugees, including Jordan. The war and terrorism, the Middle East peace process and the Syrian crisis also figured high on the meetings. His Majesty said intensive regional and international efforts are needed to counter terrorism within a holistic approach as it threatens global peace and security. He also said hate speech had to stop to prevent sedition and protect Muslim communities in the West from extremism. On the Palestinian-Israeli peace process, King Abdullah stressed the two-state solution as the only path to end the conflict and bring about peace. The absence of a just solution to the Syrian or to the Palestinian solution, he warned, will lead to further extremism. His Majesty also stressed a political solution to the Syrian crisis involving all Syrians within the Geneva negotiating track. The King and the British lawmakers also discussed Iraq and efforts to achieve reconciliation in the country. The British lawmakers commended Jordan's role to address regional crises and challenges and achieve peace and security. They also urged the international community to provide support to Jordan and countries hosting Syrian refugees.
In relation to terrorism specifically, the point that impresses me as chairman of the British Defence Select Committee of the British Parliament is the way in which His Majesty the King and his colleagues always focus on the ideological basis of this terrorism and are determined to ensure that a small minority of ideologically motivated people do not hijack the great religion of Islam.
I think we can be assured that very close relationship between Jordan and the UK, particularly on matters of defence, but also in recognising the wonderful work that Jordan has done in dealing with the major refugee crisis, is going to continue. The relationship will be deepened, and I think, to be honest, not only will the region, but the world will be the better and safer for it.
We all have a huge interest in Jordan's security and its stability, and when he comes with his ministers and makes clear the pressure the Jordanian economy is under, it then puts us under a duty to make sure that Jordan is getting the support that it needs as it's in the front line of the crisis in the Middle East.
The work that the Jordanian government and people are doing in support of Syrian refugees, and I genuinely think that you should be commended for the amount of work that you do, and I can appreciate at least some of the pressures that is putting Jordan as a country under, both in terms of looking after refugees and also the host communities as well.
We're dealing with an area where everything is moving, and His Majesty was able to bring some sort of clarity to an otherwise very confused situation. So we discussed the strategic aspects in some detail, very usefully. Obviously, Britain and Jordan have long been very close allies. We help each other, and we want to help each other more.
The Kingdom marks the 61st anniversary of the Arabization of the Jordan Armed Forces Arab Army. In 1956, His Majesty the late King Hussein Arabized the high command of the forces through the removal of British officers, particularly Lieutenant General John Bagot-Glob, the British commander of the Arab Legion. In March 1957, the Anglo-Jordanian agreement was abrogated, followed by the evacuation of British forces from the kingdom. His Majesty King Abdullah received cables of congratulations from senior officials and officers on the anniversary. His Majesty the King received a phone call from Iraqi President Fuad Massoum. They discussed Jordan-Iraqi ties, regional issues and developments in Iraq. Prime Minister Hani Molki paid surprise visits to public and private disability services centres in Adlail, Jarash and Amman. The Prime Minister said he aimed to take a closer first-hand look at the services and level of care these centres provide to the disabled. In the Zarqa sub-district of Adlail, Molki checked on services provided by the region's Disability and Rehabilitation Centre and learned about its needs, particularly qualified human resources. The Prime Minister commended the efforts exerted by the cadres of these centres, saying such work is largely a humanitarian effort. Jordan protested Israeli construction at the Umayyad palaces adjacent to the southern wall of the Al-AQSA Mosque Al-Haram Sharif compound in occupied East Jerusalem. In a strongly worded letter handed to the Israeli embassy in Amman, the government demanded the immediate cessation of the construction work. It said the construction of wooden and concrete walkways in the eastern part of the Umayyad palaces with posters at the site is an attempt to change the historical status quo in the holy city. The government said the measures are a direct violation of Israel's obligations as the occupying power under the international law and the Jordan-Israel peace treaty. The State Security Court handed down hard labor prison terms of between 15 and 8 years against 6 persons who were found guilty of these acts of terrorism. 4 of the convicts received 15-year prison terms after they were found to be supporters of Daesh and had worked to promote the terrorist group's ideology on social media. The convicts had also sought to recruit Jordanians to join the terrorist organization and also plotted to attack the tourist police building in the Amman district of Jbeha using rifles with financing from Daesh. They also planned to attack the General Intelligence Department building by improvised missiles after receiving instructions from the terror group and other targets. Syria peace talks in Geneva showed a flicker of movement. The opposition said President Bashar al-Assad negotiators had been pushed by his Russian allies to address, for the first time, opposition demands for a political transition. Meanwhile, Syrian and Russian air forces carried out airstrikes in violation of the ceasefire. More in this report.
A sense of progress at the Syria peace talks in Geneva, although ceasefire violations continued. The Syrian opposition said they had been told by UN mediator Staffan de Mistura that government negotiators were prepared to discuss a political transition at the negotiations. Head of the opposition negotiating team, Nasr al-Hariri, said they discussed political transition and related issues with de Mistura for the first time.
We heard from de Mistura that due to Russian pressure, and this is a sign that can be initially encouraging, there is acceptance to tackle the issues enshrined in Security Council Resolution 2254 and most importantly to us political transition.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the talks should focus on reaching a unified view of how Syria will be governed during the transition period and on coming to an agreement about the makeup of a national unity government. Lavrov also stressed the importance that a differentiation needed to be made between moderate opposition groups from those who chose the path of terrorism and extremism.
I hope the talks in the Geneva format will not be disrupted and that it will continue to play an important role in achieving Syrian settlement, same as the Astana format.
The ceasefire has been repeatedly violated, however, while the war has raged on. Russian and Syrian aircraft bombed positions held by the US-backed Syrian Arab coalition near the Syrian town of Al-Bab. Turkish warplanes hit 23 Daesh targets and killed 13 militants in Al-Bab and Bzaga towns in northern Syria. The military said 23 buildings and 1 car bomb were destroyed in the airstrikes. Hala Dababne for the news at 10.
The intensifying fighting of the Iraqi city of Mosul has sent more civilians fleeing the city. US-backed Iraqi forces have taken control of the last supply route for the Daesh militants who were said to be trapped in a shrinking area in the Mosul city center. Here's more.
Iraqi forces are closing in on Daesh fighters as they pressed with their offensive to retake Mosul. The US-backed troops took control of the last major road out of western Mosul that had been in Daesh hands, trapping the terrorists in a shrinking area within the city. A general said the Army's 9th Armored Division was within a kilometer of Mosul's Syria Gate, the city's northwestern entrance. Units from the elite U.S.-trained division battled incoming sniper and anti-tank fire as they advanced from the southwestern Ma'mun district of Mosul. The militants were using mortar sniper fire, booby traps and suicide car bombs to fight the offensive carried out by a 100,000-strong force made up of Iraqi armed forces, regional Kurdish Peshmerga fighters, and Iranian-trained Shiite paramilitary groups. Militants lay dead near the field command in the Ma'mun district that looked like a ghost town. Thousands of militants are believed to be in Mosul. The intensified fighting has sent more people streaming out of Mosul. About 26,000 have been displaced from western Mosul.
We fled because of airstrikes, shelling and car bombs. Thank God we made it safely.
The United Nations puts more than 176,000 the total number of people displaced from Mosul since the offensive started in October. Thousands more left, walking through the desert towards government lines during the day. They crossed over a deep trench which appears to have served as a defense for Daesh. Rana Hassan for the news at 10.
US President Donald Trump showed a different side in his first address to Congress. He seemed less combative and more inclusive as he called for unity. Trump laid out plenty of promises: a massive infrastructure and public works program, tax cuts for the middle class, immigration reform, a healthcare overhaul, and an education bill. Here's more.
A new chapter of American greatness is now beginning.
Pledging a renewal of the American spirit in an unusually uplifting speech, President Donald Trump on Tuesday laying out his top goals to Congress, but offering few clues as to how he would actually carry them out.
That America is once again ready to lead.
Trump once again insisting America must put its own interests first, but appealing for national unity in a way critics say he has failed to do so far. Gone were the attacks on familiar targets like Democrats, the news media, and the nation's intelligence services. Trump seeming more intent on changing the tone than on changing minds, reeling off a long list of familiar goals: a massive tax cut, cheaper health insurance, more spending on the military, and of course, bringing back millions of jobs from overseas, and easing up on the darker themes of his campaign.
Everything that is broken in our country can be fixed. Every problem can be solved, and every hurting family can find healing and hope.
Democrats might have been cheered by the newly uplifting rhetoric, but they saw little that would convince them to cooperate with the new president. A different tone, but it's not clear whether that would be enough to change the course of a presidency so far marked by division.
Afghan Taliban militants said they attacked police, military and intelligence targets in the Afghan capital, Kabul. Security officials confirmed attacks in at least 2 areas of the city that killed at least 3 people and wounded dozens. The Interior Ministry said a loud explosion was heard across Kabul as a car bomb was detonated near a police headquarters in the west of the city. The blast was followed by gunfire between security forces and unknown number of attackers. Fighting at the police headquarters not far from a military training school lasted for several hours, with gunmen barricaded inside the building. A separate attack appeared to have targeted an office of Afghanistan's main intelligence agency on the eastern outskirts of Kabul. An official said 2 attackers had entered the intelligence building, one blew himself up, and the second was shot by security forces. Conservative French presidential candidate François Fillon announced he will stay in the presidential race despite a deepening legal probe for alleged misuse of public funds. His statement at his campaign headquarters came after speculation that he was about to withdraw following his decision to postpone a campaign visit to the Paris Farm Show. It came as opinion polls continued to show he would lose the election. The polls show independent centrist Emmanuel Macron consolidating his status as favorite and put far-right National Front leader Marine Le Pen also among the leading candidates. Fillon's campaign has been dogged since late January by an official investigation into alleged misuse of taxpayers' money involving hundreds of thousands of euros paid to his wife and family. He denied any wrongdoing. Sicily's Mount Etna was still erupting for a third day, with fountains of lava producing a spectacular show. The activity was captured by a drone camera with footage showing streams of lava running down the volcano into the snow. Italy's National Institute of Geographics and Volcanology said the eruptions don't currently present a danger to people or property. At 3,330 meters, Etna is the continent's most active volcano and can burst into action several times in a year. Hundreds of thousands of tourists from around the world flock the Italian island of Sicily to be taken up to the Etna's craters. Only the lucky few are able to witness the volcano activity taking place. Novak Djokovic advanced to the second round of the Acapulco International with victory over Slovakia's Martin Klistan 6-3, 7-6. Djokovic has not played apart from a Davis Cup tie since crashing out of the Australian Open in the second round earlier this year. Second-seeded Rafael Nadal also won his match 6-4, 6-3 against Misha Zverev, who knocked world number 1 Andy Murray out of the Australian Open. Unseeded Argentinian Juan Martin del Potro, easing himself into the new season after receiving from wrist problems, found USA's Francis Tiafoe taking him to 3 sets in their first round of match. Heavyweight boxers Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko took on their doubters as they promoted their upcoming unification fight. The World Heavyweight Championship title unification bout will be held on April 29th at Wembley Stadium in London, where 90,000 people are expected to attend the fight. Former champion Klitschko said he is obsessed with regaining his World Heavyweight crown. During the news conference, both boxers were pressed on their preparedness for the bout. And finally, it will remain cold and partly cloudy tonight, with thundery showers in the northern, central and eastern parts of the kingdom. Tomorrow it will be relatively cold and partly cloudy to cloudy with drizzles in the northern and central regions. Winds will be northwesterly to brisk, lifting dust in southern and eastern desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a warm day tomorrow with a high of 26 degrees, northerly winds and calm seas. These are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end, here are top stories once again. His Majesty and heads and members of the Houses of Lords and Commons in the British Parliament discuss economic and security cooperation. Syria peace talks in Geneva showed a first sign of movement as the government team agrees to discuss a political transition. And Iraqi forces close in on Daesh militants in western Mosul as the fighting prompts thousands to flee. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Lo Balkar. Thank you for joining us.